Here.
George Ann Sneed.
Here.
Kimberly Sorensen.
Here.
John Stone. Here. Richard Tugman.
Here.
Sackett Wood.
Here.
Thank you very much. Next up will be the approval of our minutes for the January 19 meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those. Do we have any comments before I accept a motion to approve? May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. Next up is insurance coverage update. Margette.
So we brought this is a separate insurance policy with the directors and officers coverage. And Richard had asked about the limits for that. And so Campbell Insurance, Will Absher went back and looked at it again, and he's recommending a $5 million limit in lieu of the $2 million limit. So we broke it down for you. It's in your packet. And you held this over from the last meeting so Richard could be here.
All right, do we have any questions, comments on increasing that coverage?
I think that it's appropriate to increase the limits. I do think that this is actually an important topic, and that maybe next time we get a bit more advance notice about it and have an opportunity to review the terms and conditions. We've increased the limits, but we haven't seen the terms and conditions of the policy, and not all D&O policies are created equally. I think that we just need to weigh up those optionalities at the right time. The Cincinnati policy, I think, is fine from what I know, and I'm no expert on this, but this all affects us personally, potentially, and we want to make sure that we have the right coverage in place, and maybe going forward, a bit more advance notice, giving us an opportunity, and maybe Ted an opportunity to review those terms and conditions to make sure that we understand what we're buying. It's not just about the limits, it's about, obviously, the terms and conditions. That's my only comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? I agree, it makes sense to increase the limits just because, if for no other reason, it's been a while probably since we did increase the limits, and the world is a more expensive place than it once was.
Cost of litigation's increased, all the rest of it.
Yeah. So we're looking for, at this point, a motion, I guess, to increase that limit, to authorize staff to make that change with Campbell Insurance, and for the chair to sign the representation statement.
I'll propose that motion, Mr. Chairman.
And if you would like to make that motion upon review of the policy itself by the chair and Ted, you can do that as well.
Second. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to authorize staff to update the premium, for the chair to sign the statement upon further review by council, I guess. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, that motion is approved. Next up is mixed use on Main Street. Anna Benson.
Thank you. So this does not require action today. We're really just looking for a consensus to allow staff to work with the property owners of 400 12th Street, which is at the corner of Court and 12th Streets. It's the old restaurant supply building that is being, a couple floors are being added to it, which is super exciting, to prepare a pre-application for this new program from the Department of Housing and Community Development called Mixed Use on Main Street. This is part of the DHCD's ARPA allocation, their federal allocation. They're using it to specifically help fund mixed use in Main Street communities. So we are a designated Virginia Main Street community, projects that are on the move, ready to go, that will help them fulfill commercial use, at least 30% commercial use of that building. So the property owners at 412th are interested in applying for the program. We have to submit a pre-application before we submit a full application, which is actually pretty nice because there's a lot of work that goes into a full application. So we'll get that kind of authorization ahead of time. And if we get that approval, we'll come back to the EDA to formally be the fiscal agent and sign the authorizing resolution to submit the full application, hopefully in March if we could get already have a draft of a pre-application from the developer. So this funding would help them. They have leads on an entertainment type tenant for that first floor space, and it would help them develop and build out a space for a commercial tenant. As you all know, with mixed-use projects, it is sometimes more quickly lucrative to do all housing. And so this is encouraging developers to do that first floor commercial development and to really provide that impetus to bring in a tenant and get that space ready for commercial use.
And we brought them the prospect.
Yes.
Great.
If they didn't do the first floor, would they be eligible for this?
No, it requires at least 30% commercial in the building. So this is the only, getting the funding would help them to reach that usage.
So they started the project. Obviously, I've seen the cranes, I've watched all that stuff happening, and they presumably have borrowed for that, correct? And then this project, this program that we pre-applied for comes in, and then presumably then there's a second phase, which is the actual application, and then subsequently, we're successful, funds are given to us to dispense as we see fit. With some variability regarding the terms of the loan that can be more favorable than what's specified here.
That's right.
Is there any guidance around these next phases and what could be possibly more favorable? Are we going to be asked?
I don't have that information yet, but I have already asked them a couple questions about the terms of the loan. We've applied this model. This is modeled after the Industrial Revitalization Fund that you all have been a fiscal agent for several times. So similarly, when the applicant is either a public entity or a nonprofit entity, that funding is structured as a grant. If it is a private developer, it's structured as a loan from the Economic Development Authority. And those terms these are suggested terms. Again, we can, I think there's room in there for movement. I've also asked if the EDA obviously would be the recipient of the interest. So essentially it's sort of an administrative fee for the EDA, would be able to keep, the interest from the loan. The developer is interested in this structured as a loan. I mean, that's not a problem for them. It would be essentially a gap financing. Again, we'd have to look at terms subordinate to their construction loan, but would be gap financing just for the development of the commercial space in the building. So again, Richard, more information to come on once we get past this just initial, is it a good project? The other thing about these is timing is everything. They have a very limited amount of time to spend this money. The state has a limited amount of time to spend this money. Projects really have to be either going or ready to go to be able to finish in the amount of time that they need to spend the money. So, this project is uniquely sort of right at that sweet spot to be eligible for the program.
It looks like an exciting project. I obviously have no vision because I drive by that building frequently when I go to the Y, and just seeing it evolve.
Seeing it go up. It's really exciting.
Great.
I think they have one more floor to go.
They go to four floors.
Four on top.
Okay.
They have also, they are also looking at development of the rest of some of that block. They've acquired some other properties in that area as well.
I thought parking is going to be an issue at some point there, but anyway, that sounds exciting.
So if this goes through, the EDA is purely the fiscal agent here. All principal repayment goes back to DHCD.
No, you will be the lender. So it will come to you as a grant, and then you will structure the loan to the developer.
So
The
once the
EDA will
developer
structure the
pays
loan.
back the loan, EDA keeps the funds?
the funds.
Okay.
And we have some flexibility around making the terms of the loan more generous, and I was just wondering if we expect a request for that.
And I will get some more information on all of that before it comes back to you. We didn't want to go too far down the road before, because we have done full applications for these programs, and it's a lot of work up front and not received it. So we will come back once we kind of get that go, no go early. We'll come back with the full application and terms.
This is a how long is a piece of string question, but what do you think our chances of success are? And
I have no idea. I have felt really optimistic about these things
There's no rhyme or
before and
reason
been
to it.
devastated. So I don't know.
Well, good luck.
I'm holding my optimism in check on this one. But I do think it's a good project, and again, the timing is right for the program, which is pretty critical.
And one of the things we're using it for is because we're reaching out to all the developers here to try to find out ahead of time, what they're doing and how they're doing it, so they're not just interfacing with, community development, because when you're working in any area around the city, what you're doing is probably impacting other people, and there are things we could do or ways we could help or different things like that. A lot of these programs, as Anna said, you almost have to be either ready to go, or you got to think about how perhaps you could restructure your project to qualify for some of this. So it's just so hard to do it after the fact. So we're trying to reach out. This came out of reaching out to them, ahead of time, because they're doing other projects, but just trying to make them aware of the resources that are out there. And fortunately for them, they were able to turn it around really, really quickly.
Sure.
So this is only funding for a portion of the project?
Yeah, it's just gap funding.
Approximately how much?
Up to 500,000. So that will be subject to DHCD and the application. Our experience is typically that we'll apply for the full amount, and we might get a portion of that. Depends on how many applications they have for this particular program.
The project is approximately how much?
The total, I'm not sure the total project cost. Again, that's stuff that we will bring back in full detail.
Okay.
Yep.
Definitely multiples of 500,000. So this is not an action item, correct?
It's not. I mean,
just an FYI.
I think it's really just consensus to let us move forward for a pre-application that doesn't require any formal authorization at this point. We'll bring that back to you, and there will be you'll have to do a local resolution for the chair to sign for us to submit the formal application. So we'll bring that back.
So does anyone have any qualms on moving forward with pre-application?
No.
Very good, thank you.
You bet.
And you keep the floor, Anna, with
I will.
co-starters.
It's a big day. I'm probably going to stand up to see slides, but I just wanted to bring back to you all the cohort report from our fall 2022 co-starters cohort. Just so you know, to date, we started this program in 2015 with a brief hiatus in COVID. We ran a couple cohorts virtually, pulled back just to sort of really analyze program, and then have relaunched it in fall of 22. To date, 116 people have participated in the program since 2015, with some of your favorite businesses, Mrs. Joy's, Golf Park Coffee. Some great success stories have come out of this program, and also just some great people equipped to make better decisions about starting small businesses, right? A lot of, I think one of our expectations early on was that everybody who came out of the program would start a business, and it's not the case, and that's okay too. So it's a really excellent program. So these are just excerpts, and I apologize they're so small, but I'll just read some highlights of the fall program. We ran this from September 12th to November 21st. New in our program is we have contracted essentially the Small Business Development Center to administer this for us. Previously, staff was administering the program, but in that partnership, it actually strengthens the pipeline for the Small Business Development Center, and they really are the experts in entrepreneurial training, so they can really identify people who need to come into this and also help them at where they need to go after this. So that has been a really good change, I think, in relaunching this program. So it had a similar demographic makeup to most Co-Starters cohorts across the country. Again, this is an international program. We were one of the earlier communities to adopt this, but it has grown exponentially. Kim, you were a trained facilitator. I think you facilitated a cohort early on with us. Yeah. So we retrained a group of facilitators in the fall as well and added a couple new ones. And Kristen Prozen was actually, who was our facilitator this fall, was actually a graduate of the program a couple years ago. So I'm going to go through some of the demographics, but the cohort had increased their confidence in their entrepreneurial skills by 78%. They do a pre-survey and a post-survey, just asking about some of those sentiments. They've reported a 63% increase in satisfaction with the resources available to them, so increased knowledge about what this community has to offer, and an 85% satisfaction with the facilitator and the program itself. So those are all really good numbers. Just some gender, age, race, demographic breakdown, mostly female. We've seen this kind of be a trend, I think, in all of our cohorts. I would say this is almost 80% female. We have seen that pretty much. Our cohorts are 12 to 15 people, mostly young, 25 to 44 here, 80%. This cohort particularly was about 70-30 white to black. That has not always been the case. We have seen, I think if you look back over the 116 people who have graduated this, African American women is the number one demographic of people who have participated in this. A pretty structured income breakdown across the board. And then education, most people have at least a bachelor's degree, about 50%. So most people are in the concept stage, and Co-Starters is really that sweet spot for a concept stage. It helps you more explore an idea and also explore yourself in starting a business, right? Am I ready for this? Do I know how to build a team? Do I have my finances? Do I have time, right? There's a lot of exploration of who you are as an individual with a great idea. And the benefit here is that, you're really investing in the person, not the business, right? This person is going to be someone who might have multiple ideas, and we're giving them the tools and resources and connections and support to explore the idea now, but also ideas into the future. A pretty good mix of sort of the industry type. We do see a lot of kind of creative arts and culture in here, education, entertainment, professional services. Professional services is sort of the light yellow. Creative cultural arts is the green. Where's the money coming from? All of these folks, 100% personal savings. Okay, so to start their businesses. That's probably a good thing. We don't really always want to see maxing out your credit cards, doing a second mortgage. Those are things that we address in the class and we talk about is how are these things financed? Where's your money coming from? How much is it going to cost? Definitely most in the startup stage, this venture stage. At the end of the program, still startup stage, really 75% versus operating stage, so that hasn't changed much. And the gross capital investment, I think, is an interesting number. It's a little bit around $30,000 for each of these businesses on average. So just some testimonials, and then again, I read sort of the big, I know how to start and lead a venture, increase. Before it was 10%, after was 88%. I have the resources I need, before 0%, after 63%. So you're seeing that this course really is, moving the needle on folks' readiness for starting a business. I'm confident, I love this one, I'm confident my venture will work 80% ahead of time, 88% after, right? So you see that it's, that confidence level is not necessarily what we're judging. People know that they have a great idea, but do they have the resources, the support, the tools? Do they know where to go next? I know my next steps, before 10%, after 75%. So this is an awesome program. It is nationally, we've chosen it and we've stuck with it because it is a tool that works. And it also, like I said, it helps, it's more geared towards a person in a cohort setting, in a community setting. Most of the conversation is with one another. It's not a teaching at you class. It's a facilitator, not a teacher, right? They're facilitating the material. Each week is a speaker come in on different topics from the local business community. So we really do try to build that network and help people feel supported and also knowledgeable about where they can go next. So our goal right now is to run this program once a year. We have done as many as twice a year. We have some interest in a high school version of this, maybe through Beacon of Hope. That's been discussed. So we're looking at other ways that we can use our license. Our license is $3,000 annually. That's really the fiscal impact of the program. It's not incredibly doesn't have a high cost, but it really does have a high impact. So that is the end of the co-starters report. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to take them.
I just want to say to that, the other good component is the self-evaluation for those who think they have a great business idea and want to mortgage their house, and afterwards might come out that they don't do it.
Yes.
So it's also a saving grace for some individuals.
What do prospective participants find out about the program?
We market the program. We use our existing our graduates to market the program. We have a pretty extensive list of bankers and lawyers, people who are working with small businesses on the front line that know about the program, that help us refer. And then I think critically that partnership with the Small Business Development Center is really going to help us build the pipeline for the program. One thing, so this was the National Co-Starters Report that I just went through. We will also get a report with the Small Business Development Center of how many folks came out of this and went on to use other SBDC services or take more SBDC classes. They also track funding and lending, how much borrowing and things like that for a longer period of time. So that's a real strength of that partnership, and we'll be able to continue to get that data.
Is the SBDC connected to the SBA?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It is. It's a program of the SBA.
Okay, thank you.
Downtown Lynchburg Association is supporting some sort of storefront competition.
That's right.
Right? Is the Office of Economic Development behind that in some way?
We're supporting it. I'm serving on the committee to select participants and also review pitches. That's a community business launch grant from the Department of Housing and Community Development. It was flush with cash right now. We actually secured that funding about 10 years ago when we started Co-Starters. Actually 2014, 2015, when it helped us launch this program. And we did a pitch competition with that as well. Some of it at Riverviews, some of you may remember that. So they've secured that grant again, and they're doing, and it really is for storefront activation specifically. So these businesses have to go through a training program and be ready to open a storefront within less than a year. So it's very specific to downtowns. Co-starters is a feeder for that, for sure. I think we'll see people who have come out of co-starters over the years go through that. But we did not attach the co-starters curriculum to that program for a reason. We didn't, when we did this pitch competition a couple years ago, we realized that the carrot of funding and pitch competition, pitch funding, actually was not very conducive to the education that we were offering. People were really motivated by winning as opposed to learning. So we separated those two things strategically on purpose. But again, it will be a feeder to that. And hopefully people who may not be successful or may not get the funding will continue to explore their business ideas. So that should happen. I believe they've set a date in May. So they've closed applications. They're going through a selection process. People will go through some education, and then they'll pitch later in the spring.
And if you look back to that program 8 years ago, I think that was right when I'd first joined the EDA. And I sat on the panel and judged the pitches. And one, it was a lot of fun. But if you look back, you can see, a handful of businesses that competed there, some of whom got some funding, some of whom didn't, but they're still around, like Golf Park.
Yep.
And the woodworking over on 12th Street.
Yep. Benny's, Mrs. Joy's, Good Karma Tea, which has not changed owners, but is still in business. So, yeah.
And they have some really, DHCD has some really high expectations. So not only do you go through the pitch competition, but you need to be in a storefront, like in less than 12 months. So if you can imagine somebody trying to figure out, you know, am I going in business? And I'm not saying all of them are starting brand new, but it's just a lot to get through there. And I think a lot of times people feel like that when you're leading the competition that you understand all the issues they have, and therefore you wouldn't let them be in it, or you wouldn't let them move forward if you couldn't help them with all of those things. And it can be really, really labor intensive.
Thanks, Anna. It's a great small business program.
Yeah.
Any questions on that before we move on? You're still up?
I'm still up.
Regional Technology Hub.
Okay, this is really just an informational piece for you all. The no action required today, but this is a program that we're looking at. There's a big federal funding opportunity, and it is much bigger than the city of Lynchburg. It's going to require kind of big regional approach, but it was brought to us by our friend, or an old friend of ours that worked with EWI, who we have worked with for many years on manufacturing innovation, and he is working with a group in Kentucky on this program. And so, you know, he knows our nuclear sector, he knows our manufacturing sector and innovation. So he came to us and said, hey, this might be something that you're interested in looking at. So we've spent a little time with it. We're very, very early in reaching out to partners. Margette has reached out to our friends in Charlottesville and Danville and Roanoke, Blacksburg, and to sort of see if there's some interest regionally in looking at the program. But I just wanted to take you through some of the slides and just information that that we've been reading about, looking about. I think even just this week, so again, it's a Federal Economic Development Administration program, just sent out the review of the planning grants, right? It's essentially that call for comment, right? So it's still very nascent even at the federal level, but just something that we're looking at and wanted to bring you all up to speed on. So this is from the CHIPS, which you guys may remember is all about semiconductors. The CHIPS Act, Senator Warner was actually, I think, the author of this legislation. But it is the Chip and Science Act. So this is the science part. And it is essentially to stimulate economic growth. The program would support 3 different components: the designation of hubs, within federal EDA regions. And there's a map in here that will show you what those regions are. Virginia's on the southern end of a region that goes all the way to Maine. So they're big regions, but the designation of a number of hubs within each federal EDA region. Looking at sort of smaller planning strategy grants, which will come first, and then implementation grants to do this work. Implementation funding will support workforce training, business development, domestic supply chain development, attraction of investments, manufacturing, commercialization, and entrepreneurial support. So big. This is something that our friends at EWI have always kind of helped us with, which is, you know, in manufacturing, they want proven technologies. There's often this he calls it the valley of death, the gap of death, which is where, you know, government and universities are, you know, looking at or developing new technologies, and they don't always make it to the market, right? And there's this place in the middle that needs to connect those pieces together. And a lot of times new innovation and technology commercialization gets stuck in that, what they call the valley of death. So this program is essentially helping to funnel resources into that connective tissue between technology development and commercialization of the products. So essentially in this legislation, they want to foster regional clusters. And again, big region, not necessarily like the Lynchburg region. This would be statewide, not even statewide, but maybe like west of Richmond, right? That kind of thing, that are not currently leading technology centers. And there's some specifics around that. So they're not likely to look at necessarily Northern Virginia or, you know, Tidewater or some of those areas. They want to look in more rural technology areas. So it's a huge program. $10 billion authorized. They've just appropriated $450 million of $10 billion. So they're looking at expanding tech jobs, manufacturing beyond the traditional innovation powerhouses, geographically distributed, at least 20 hubs across the country within the EDA regions. Will be highly competitive. It'll be multi-step process. Again, we're on the ground floor here, just sort of throwing this out there as something that we want to look at. This is specific to the legislation. Again, it's $10 billion. Some of these, I'm just going to kind of go through this pretty quickly, and I'm happy to share these with you all if you want to read in more detail. But at least 3 new hubs in each of the 6 regions is what they're looking at. Here are the regions. So you can see that Virginia goes all the way to Maine. And then, but interestingly, Virginia's really competitive set in economic development is south of here. Typically, it's North Carolina, it's South Carolina. That's typically who Virginia's, our competitors are, or west of here. That's Chicago. I would say that's Chicago. So looking at this, like if they did 3 in a region, it might be, New England, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, right? So we're kind of looking at hopefully pulling together a region like that. They want to truly transform a region around a key sector. We are uniquely situated with nuclear engineering in this sector. So, and energy is one of their targeted manufacturing sectors here as well. Again, some of those key technologies that they're looking at, automation, advanced manufacturing, nuclear technologies, related manufacturing technologies, data management, data storage. It's a wide range, but really being able to dig into like what our specific unique kind of value proposition is will be really, really important. Our required partners, this is why we're on the very ground floor here. This will require institutes of higher education beyond our region, state and local governments, economic development organizations, industry, and workforce training. So it'll be all of these folks working together to put together a planning grant or an implementation grant. And again, it's they've just authorized $50 million for planning grants, and that was that call for comment that just went out this week. Implementation grants will likely be several years out, but up to $10 billion is what the initial authorization has been. So I think that's all I've got on that. I know it's big, but I just wanted to give you all just kind of an update on what we're looking at in that respect.
Sounds very competitive.
Of course, they all
It
are.
is very competitive, but to me, it's like when the Amazon headquarters was coming out here.
Yep.
If you didn't get in the game, I mean, I had people that, probably work in, in retail calling me going, are you going to compete for the Amazon headquarters? So I will not be left behind on any of these anymore. And the other part of it is they're incredibly complicated, and although they say not, they're probably incredibly political. Sure. And many times when it comes to the state of Virginia, Lynchburg and in our area is not Southwest Virginia, so we're not, they don't see us as doing, really struggling, and they go, well, they're just fine. And then everything else, goes to Tidewater or up the way. So we just wanted to take the lead. We were really fortunate to have the folks from EWI who are working all across the country, who also know, to me, I'd rather be led by the private sector instead of a bunch of nonprofits coming together to try to create a hub that they then have to go out and make sure that the private sector is going to support them. I think we've already seen that around here once. Out in Bedford County. So,
Does the hub stay in the state, or is it?
yeah, it would be physically
We
located.
don't reach out to eastern West Virginia and southern Pennsylvania.
No, well, not yet. We never say never, but the truth is that like I said, we've already reached out beyond the the Go Virginia regions that are already designated out there. We've reached out to the folks that are around us to see, you know, if they would be interested. And many of them are probably already looking into, you know, what they could do on their own. First of all, we just want you equipped that if anybody asks if the Office of Economic Development for the City of Lynchburg knows anything about the regional hubs, yes, we do, and we did before the announcement came out.
So it sounds a bit esoteric to me. There's obviously a lot of money at
Yes.
stake here, and also a bit chicken and eggish in a sense. But
Yes.
from a Lynchburg perspective in particular, and technology in particular, right? The nuclear industry seems to be
That
a
would be
sort of
it.
natural
Absolutely.
place for us to basically pitch or put a stake in the ground.
That's exactly what we did.
So
I went
so
to
that's-
Rex first.
Okay. So we would see that to be the real
Yes.
prime moving factor for us is
Absolutely.
nuclear and all the consequent, you know, clean technologies and zero emissions and all the rest of it.
Right. We just believe the future of nuclear innovation is right here in our own
completely
backyard.
agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's why we jumped on. And
Don't
it's
convince me.
specifically stated as one of the key areas that they have put down there. So I don't know that there'd be a lot of people that could compete with us.
So would you
on that
expect
side
that
of
we
it.
would would the EDA associate with an Arriva Framatome, whatever they call themselves
Yes.
now, and a BWXT, and maybe some of the other ancillaries or cascading down
Exactly.
businesses that have come
Yes.
out of that?
Because if I didn't get any interest, if I hadn't gotten any interest from Framatome and BWXT, you know, I might go through the motion, but I really wanted support from the private sector with the area of focus that we have the most strength in. And I want them to know that we're not, you know, we are trying to do things because BWXT and EWI, they've been talking about innovation centers and different things like that for a really long time.
It also includes associated industries like robotics and
Sure.
automation, so.
Absolutely.
I mean.
Well, even some defense industry consequences of that we've seen here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's all sorts of different
Right.
tangential connection points.
Okay.
Yes. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Next
Okay.
is our staff report.
Yeah. So we have, I'm going to go through this really quickly because we need to go into closed session. We've done an RFP for engineering services, just kind of a blanket engineering services, which is going to really help us in the future, that if we need to go and do a master plan or we need to do something really quickly, we won't have to stop everything we're doing and try to find somebody that's already got an annual contract with the city. We procured this for the Office of Economic Development. So whoever is procured, I think it closes in March, at the beginning of March, would be like a Draper Aiden or folks like that, but we had a full cadre of different services there. But they will help us to complete the Go Virginia grant, the due diligence at the Airport Commerce Park, as well as Ivy Creek A and B sites, the due diligence for that, and any of the other things that we're looking at to work on. So, Anna, did you have anything else? Yeah, we held an enterprise zone how-to workshop, and we streamed it, so our enterprise zone grants are due on April the 3rd. So we specifically go pull the building permits and let everybody know individually if they qualify or look like they could be eligible to qualify for the grant. Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on staff report, comments? Great. So we do need to head into closed session. Pavlina, if you would please lead us in that direction.
Sure. So, is there a motion to enter into a closed session? And based on what reason? Because
Yeah, well, is there, do you have the language?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
So yeah, do we have a motion to enter into a closed session under 2.23711 of Virginia Code? Either to discuss or consider acquisition of real estate for public purpose or disposition of publicly held property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy.
Check.
And do we have a motion to enter into a closed session also under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, subsection A5, to discuss a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry in locating or expanding its facilities in the community? Okay, we have motion. Okay.
I'll second. All right, we have a motion to go into closed session based on all those terms Paulina read
Okay.
for us. All in favor, please signify by
Thank you,
saying aye.
Bethany. That was awesome.
All opposed, same sign. All right, we are in closed session.